Take a look at your screen here as Israel police have released video showing the rescues of several hostages over the weekend during an operation in Gaza. We brought that to you as breaking news Saturday as 4 of those hostages held for more than 8 months were rescued alive by Israel. I do want to talk more about the video itself, so let's bring in Master Sergeant Dean Elsdunne with the Israeli police joining me live. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Of course. Well, first off, we are watching that video off to the left-hand side of the screen there. Can you walk me through exactly what is going on in that video that we're seeing?
Absolutely. Listen, what you're seeing right there is bravery at its best, dedication. These are officers from the National Counterterrorism Unit, the Yamam. It belongs to the Israel police, and it's the tip of the spear when it comes to missions of this sort, hostage rescue and extractions, not just various missions when it comes to counterterrorism. But as you can see, they went into a very hostile area, a very volatile area, in order to make the Israeli dream come true of bringing our loved ones home. For 8 months now, we've been waiting to have our loved ones reunited with their families. And these heroic officers, together with the IDF, together with the Shin Bet, the Israel Security Agency, and the Israeli government, worked meticulously after planning and after coordinating to make that come true.
And it's kind of hard to tell from the video itself. Again, you can see it on your screen, but what conditions were the hostages being held in when they were rescued?
Josh, I really can't speculate to the conditions that they're being held in. I can tell you, how it all started on October 7th when many of them were taken brutally by armed Hamas gunmen, terrorists from a music festival, many of them from their homes in the middle of the morning, not knowing what was happening. The conditions, how they were being held, I'm sure we're going to hear from them when they come out there, when the hostages are medically cleared and they can testify to themselves. But I'm guaranteeing you that it's not going to be pleasant. It's not going to be nice. We've had even the UN themselves send a team here, a sexual convoy team to determine war crimes. And they said themselves, based on the evidence that they gathered and the testimony that they gathered from speaking with people, speaking with witnesses, and from the evidence that's being examined by the Israel police, that sexual assault and rape did take place. So I wouldn't put it past it that we're going to hear some more of those stories, unfortunately, from the hostages that we were able to successfully extract a few days ago.
And just tell me, when you realize that these 4 hostages have been rescued there, I'm talking about Israel police, IDF, everyone involved, what is going through their minds, your mind at that point, as you realize we have 4 hostages and they are alive and they have now been rescued?
It's mixed emotions, I really have to tell you, because on one hand, we want nothing more than our hostages to come home. They've been held in captivity for over 8 months now by the Hamas terrorists. It's an internationally recognized terror regime that's holding innocent civilian captives. And then on the other hand, you have the heroic officer, Commander Arnon, who gave his life to make this come true. And as the mission came to its conclusion and he made his way to the hospital in critical condition, they announced his death. And, the whole nation came together. We were at his funeral, and you see that he is the true face of Israel. And I want to tell you just a few words about him. Even before he's a commander, before he was part of the most elite counterterrorism unit there is in Israel, he was a husband to Michal. He was a father to Noam and to Itai. And now they're part of all of our families. These individuals, they go home and we don't even hear about the missions that they do on a day-to-day basis. Right now, we heard about his mission because it came to light, because the hostages were released, and so it became publicized. But just imagine the missions that he goes on day to day that we don't hear of, that these terrorists try to, their main mission, their main goal that's instilled into them from propaganda, from incendiary material going on social media sites, to kill, to hate. And he is the one that's the face and the body that gets to separate terror from civilians. He did it right now to rescue these hostages. He did it on October 7th, and he was part of the team in Yad Mordechai that prevented terrorists, Hamas terrorists, from making their way to Tel Aviv. So when I tell you what's going through our minds, I'm thinking about our heroes. He's now the 63rd police officer to give his life in the line of duty since October 7th against terror and be the bulletproof vest of Israel.
Israel police did release this helmet cam video. Explain to me what you hope that people watching this video and watching this right now will take away from it.
That they were rescued. This was an extraction. This was not a release. This was not, the hostages were not just freed. They've been in captivity, and we're doing everything possible to bring them out. And when I tell you that they're in captivity, look at where they were captive, in a civilian area. That's part of the Hamas type of warfare that they do, that it's guerrilla warfare, it's urban warfare. They hide themselves among civilians, and you don't know. The civilians may have been holding them. Were they actually civilians? Were they associated or complicit with the terrorists, which is what it very much seems right here in these videos. So it's very difficult conditions that we have to go in to bring our loved ones home. But you have to remind yourself, this was a rescue. Civilians are being held hostage. And if it was your loved one that was inside of a alien location, you would want to do anything to bring them home. You would expect your nation to do anything to bring them home.
And it's interesting because you hear some people say that these hostages were, quote unquote, released. But as you mentioned, it's important to note they were not released. They were rescued there. So I do appreciate you pointing that out. Also, I know a lot of this does have to remain under wraps. We're talking about secret operations and things of that nature, but we know that several agencies were involved in these rescues. So can you kind of break down how something like this does come together and how everyone is able to work together?
It's very complex, and like you said, a lot of it is under wraps. And it's not because I don't want to tell you. These heroes deserve to have each one of their stories told and the hard work that they put in told. But when I give you this information, now I endanger my officers and the other security forces in the field, giving out techniques or strategies that can endanger them. We still have 120 hostages that are waiting to come home, 5 of them being American, Josh. And so the more that I tell you, the more that I possibly endanger. What I can tell you, though, is that it was meticulous planning. It was meticulous intelligence from the Shin Bet, the Israel Security Agency. It was meticulous assistance and cover from the IDF, who involved their ground forces, their air forces, and it was meticulous dedication from the Yamam officers, the Israel Police Counterterrorism Unit, who have been training, who train year-round for things like this. But when the time comes, when they're called, they're not thinking left and right. They're tunnel vision in order to accomplish their mission.
My last question here before I let you go. Israel, of course, celebrating the rescue of these hostages, as are people pretty much worldwide. But at the same time, you have the United Nations claiming war crimes were committed. So I want to get your take. What do Israel police make of those claims? And what do you say to those accusations?
You know, I'm going to speak to you on behalf of Dean. I'm not going to speak to you because I'm not a politician. And I'm going to speak to you on behalf of an Israeli who's here, who's not giving his opinions under a fluorescent light. We have been under missile fire, over 17,000 rockets fired into Israel. We have had one of the worst massacres take place in Israeli history, where gunmen came in. They massacred innocent civilians at a music festival. It could have been the EDC Music Festival in Florida or the Coachella Music Festival in California. They came in and they did this, brutally abducting them, taking them from their families. I don't need to get into the gruesome natures of what Hamas committed on October 7th, but I can tell you that there's a difference between war crimes and war. And Hamas declared this war when they invaded into Israel and massacred innocent civilians, and then when they took captive over 200 hostages, civilian hostages waiting to come home, including children, the Bibas family, Naama Levi, many people still inside of Gaza. We don't know their conditions. So I think that we need to be very clear about the questions being asked. I think we need to be very clear of where this claim of war crimes is coming from. If it's coming from Hamas, we need to remember that it's an internationally recognized terror organization. So any information they give should be very much taken from a distance, because we've seen their claims multiple times debunked, whether it's the casualty amounts that they've had, where the UN had to walk back their statement of how much people was actually included in that casualty amount, and how they don't separate the terrorists from the civilians in the casualty amount. They've debunked the hospital bombing. They've debunked the strike into Rafah. All these different things, you know, we rush to blame and criticize Israel and yell out war crimes, but the questions are being asked wrong here. We need to be looking at Hamas, the internationally recognized terror organization, with these difficult questions, who are oppressing their own people, not allowing the humanitarian aid to get to them. We have trucks waiting at the crossings to get to their civilians. Our war, Josh, is not with the Gazans. Our war is with Hamas, a terror organization. And when the Twin Towers attack happened in 9/11 in the United States, nobody asked questions. They just knew that they needed to eliminate the extremist terror ideology that was running rampant and to prevent it from happening again in the US. So what's the difference here, Josh? We're trying to protect our nation, to defend our nation, and we owe it to them. We owe it to the entire Western society because it doesn't stop here. Today it happened here, but tomorrow, as we already see taking place, it could happen in the streets of America or Europe.
All right, Master Sergeant, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and break down that video and the situation in the Middle East. Is there anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
I want to thank the U.S. for their support. I want to thank all those abroad who know to differentiate extremist terror ideology from what's actually taking place here and not rush to make statements of things that are happening without knowing what's actually happening on the ground. Again, it's very easy to make opinions under fluorescent lighting. And I want to thank all the wives of the soldiers and of the officers who they at home are holding down the fort so that our officers, all the spouses really, are allowing them to focus on the mission of bringing our loved ones home and ending the extremist terror ideology that's running rampant and endangering our civilians.
Master Sergeant Dean Elsdunne with the Israel Police, thank you again for taking the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Fox.